BoxingVoice.com, Nesta Gibbs here in association with FightHype, Keith one-time Thurman. Thurman versus Crawford, man. I still want that fight. Crawford is allegedly out of his contract in October. Still no rumors of a fight for you. You just told me off air no contract has been sent for anything for you. He obviously doesn't have anything. How can we get this fight done? Can you get on the phone and say, yo, I want this fight? Let's, you know, maybe.
I mean, if he's, you know me. I love great fights. I truly do. I don't hate on a good fight. I don't hate on a great challenge. That's what I live for in this sport. So for me, a lot of it personally has to do with getting Bob out the picture, right? You saw my IG earlier in the year, with Bob. Not a big fan of him. Don't even, Crawford really needs to get away from that. I mean, the man doesn't even give credit to his own fighters. You know what I mean? What kind of promoter is that? Mm-hmm. That he's above the fighters that created his whole industry. You know what I mean? You gotta give respect where respect is due, and he doesn't respect his own fighters. It's not easy doing business with Bob, so I have no interest. It's not. I have tons of interest in Crawford. I have interest in the greatest fights at 147. It's Thurman versus everybody. I think it's Thurman versus everybody makes some of the best fights at 147. So I'm definitely interested in it, but got to take Bob out the picture. And if that means October, then maybe sometime later this year that we might be able to really start talking about a Crawford fight.
So these questions are, our most loyal listeners that listen to the Boxing Voices podcast. We got Victor Banuelos from Tijuana. No. Tunganga, California? Tunganga? I don't know. He says, what's up, champ? What is the most difficult thing about pursuing a boxing career, and what is the easiest thing about boxing?
Well, that's a good question. So the most difficult thing about pursuing a boxing career, I'm gonna give it a little bit of twofold difficulty. One, getting the right team behind you, right? Now, the reason why this is very important is not just for you to develop the proper skills and technique involved with boxing, but having the right team behind you could help move you into, due to their past history with working with past fighters, it can help move you into the arms of a good manager or a good promoter. Getting in with a good manager and a good promoter and not getting benched early on in your career, not taking 4 years to make yourself 10-0 as you're starting as a professional fighter. So the hardest thing is to get the ball rolling properly, get the right people behind you, and get over that 15-0 hump. Unless if you weigh like 110 pounds, it's really hard to get elevated till you build up your record. So getting off the ground has to be one of the hardest things in the sport of boxing, because the 4-round level, it's very easy to get a draw or a loss. You got to win 3 out of 4 rounds. This is what I tell my young bloods all the time. You got to win 3 out of 4 rounds to win the fight, which means you might as well just win the whole freaking fight. You got to dominate the fight. You don't got rounds to give away. It's not 12-round championship level. You're a sprinter, you're not a marathon runner. So there's a lot of small little things like that are very challenging in getting to that 15-0, 17-0 mark before you start really getting your name out there, elevating yourself. But nowadays with social media and all these YouTubers and different ways of just getting your fight seen, like it was streamed. Like you might be 5-0, but your knockout still happened to be on YouTube. That's very good for these young kids. So boxing is changing, but I still believe that what I just said is one of the hardest things in the sport of boxing, getting off the ground and getting the right people behind you. Now, one of the easiest things in boxing, I would say one of the easiest things is it's not really the easiest, but one of the easiest things is just learning how to box. I don't consider boxing the most complicated sport to learn. I consider it it's complicated to master, okay? But when it comes to learning, that's why you go to a gym, you travel, you just happen to be in California, you happen to be in New York, you happen to be in Texas or Florida where we are now. And you go to a gym and you see the best fighter in the gym and you're like, man, that boy real nice and this and that. But then you see a whole lot of fighters and you're like, damn, he's a good fighter. He's a good fighter. He's a good fighter. It doesn't take a lot to be a good fighter. It takes a lot to be a great fighter. You know? So I would say just learning boxing, for people who just want to learn boxing and maybe get in the ring and just kind of learn how to protect themselves and work off the jab and learn how to hold their own in the ring, I don't think it's the hardest to do. A lot of people hold their own. And this is what I tell a lot of young bloods, like, yeah, kid, you're boxing against everybody. Are you dominating people?